Morning guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. The community's in uproar today with Stefano Domenicali confirming beyond any reasonable doubt the future of this sport will involve more sprint races, reverse grids, and potentially even shorter Grand Prix because the TikTok generation do not have the attention span to watch 70 laps of a track. What is going on in F1 right now? What does this future hold? Why are so many of these ideas so problematic for so many different reasons? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I've got plenty to get into around the Italian Grand Prix. Speaking of Helmut Marko, just wanted to quickly mention this. Do we think Adrian Newey has had a part to play in the development of Aston Martin this season? They say, he seemingly said that pretty much all of his work was on 2026. Certainly that has been the case for some time. Would it be a massive surprise when he joined on whatever it was, the 1st of March, that he had a quick look at their plans for the rest of the season and said, oh, maybe look at this, maybe look at that, and maybe we're seeing that reflect on the track. But it's not like Newey was working a lot on the 25 car, which maybe is even good for Aston, right? Because on paper, if Newey hasn't done that much, although Marko says, look, they've obviously made a big jump, he feels like there's been some sort of Newey influence in the progress that Aston have made. But let's say he was completely abject or absent, whatever, from the 2025 campaign. Probably a decent sign that Aston Martin at least have some competent other engineers in that camp, although of course not starting the year well is a sign of the opposite. Few things at Red Bull. Isaac Hadjar becomes the 5th youngest driver ever to stand on a podium after Max, Lance Stroll, Antonelli earlier this year, Lando in 2020, and now Isaac Hadjar this year. Now Yuki was quite quick to actually take some credit for his podium, and I think Yuki's right to do this just because you might as well at this point, right? If you're Yuki, you've got nothing to lose, throw everything and the kitchen sink at trying to keep that drive. As he says, I believe I've contributed to bringing Racing Bull's level to this level, right? Their performance. And to be fair, Yuki might have an argument to make. He's been at that team for a long time. The development of that car, the decisions they've made, the trajectory of that team. Yuki has clearly had some part to play in that. Whether you think that's enough for Yuki to say, hey, like, I was, well done, Hadjar, like, you know, I did it for you, you know, like, obviously he's not saying that precisely. The situation for me is completely different, but I want to say congratulations. So kind of what Yuki's saying here is, hey, Racing Bulls, their car's pretty nice now, at least in part because of me. Red Bull, keep me around and I'll fix your whole machine, don't worry about it, right? And I think maybe Red Bull will understand what he's getting at, but also if Hadjar keeps performing like this and Tsunoda keeps performing like this, then Red Bull's hand will be forced, right? Like, it might not prove to be the best decision, but to put Hadjar in the car, we've seen what's happened before. But what are you going to do when the guy's performing like that? Yuki apparently has until Mexico. We're talking another 4 or 5 races pretty much. September and October for Yuki to prove himself. They're not going to give him all of the races to the end of the season. He's not going to get the Las Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, whatever triple header they're going to do at the end of the year. He might drive that for Red Bull, but they will have made the decision by then, is pretty much what Red Bull are saying. The race reported on it. There were some other publications reporting on it as well over the last couple of days. Max, understandably, wasn't very happy around Zandvoort, and he was competing with Hadjar for the 2nd place on the podium, right? Which is not where he would want to be. As he says, the whole race, we're basically fighting our sister team on pure pace. That shouldn't be happening. And in Hungary, arguably, the Racing Bulls was just straight up quicker. There is a debate. Is the Racing Bulls a faster car than the Red Bull? My honest opinion is no. I think we've seen Max do some things in that Red Bull this year, like in Silverstone sticking it on pole, like in Japan, for example, and many other great performances he's had, that I just don't think the Racing Bull is capable of. What you tend to find is that cars that are tricky to drive, that the Red Bull clearly is, the gap between a normal driver, obviously all of the drivers in F1 are exceptional, but a normal exceptional driver and a true great in Max Verstappen is exacerbated. You give the Red Bull the RB21, the problematic car that it is, but very snappy on the front end. It's clearly a real handful to drive. Max is able to get the best out of that most of the time, and his gap to a normal exceptional driver is going to be bigger than if he was driving a very benign car. Do I think that Max would go to Racing Bulls and be dunking 5/10 on Hadjar every weekend? No, I don't think he would. I'd like Red Bull to stick him in the sister team and see how it would go, obviously to see if he could prove me wrong, but you know, my theory is that the Racing Bulls is a more benign car. It's easier to get to the limit, and Max would obviously have an edge, but he probably wouldn't have as much of an edge. And I think when the car all comes together, the Red Bull is quicker, but in terms of scoring championship points at this point in the season, there is an argument that the Racing Bulls on certain weekends would simply be the better car to be driving right now. So there's some debate on that. We're not going to know the answer to it. And frankly, if Red Bull did feel like Max driving the Racing Bulls was going to give him a chance at the championship, they'd probably do it, right? Because, you know, obviously they're focused on Max trying to win rather than themselves. But yeah, tweet your thoughts on that in the comments. Couple of other things. Colapinto will not be driving first practice in Monza. Paul Aron is going to get the drive instead. Kind of interesting. No surprises really. Monza, common testing ground for rookies, but just the fact that Colapinto out and Aron in is interesting timing, because as one of their reserve drivers, there's a possibility that Alpine might be considering that for next season. The other consideration is that maybe Yuki Tsunoda, if he gets kicked out of Red Bull, could be a driver there alongside Gasly next season, which we have seen before to decent success. If you guys didn't see yesterday, Alex Dunn is going to be back in the car. This time he's going to be in Oscar Piastri's car in the first practice session at the Italian Grand Prix, and we'll get into practice in a second because there's been a bit of drama about that, as we'll see. Just quickly, Mercedes have commented on Kimi Antonelli. Obviously they're going to defend their man, their boy, their child, whatever. Like, obviously Antonelli is of age, right, but he's still, you know, the youngest really on the grid, and yes, they're going to back him in a difficult 8 or 9 rounds that he has had. But Bradley Lord, who's their kind of director of comms and PR and stuff, he says people have done their mid-season evaluations. Kimi has received some criticism, perhaps some suggestions that things aren't working out. We've been very clear this is a learning year. It's come very early. He's still young and at an early stage. We know there'll be mistakes, but we're looking for signs and indications that he is learning, building his experience, and developing his capability as a driver. There were lots of those in Zandvoort. When we look at the pure underlying performance, we can see good progress, and we can see that he's got much more confidence in the car now. We've reverted on the rear suspension configuration. So, look, obviously Mercedes are going to gas him up, but I think that I understand what they're getting at here. I think there have been signs that Antonelli's actually made some progress. Even George said this. He was like, look, if you exclude the sprint at Miami, qualifying for that was mega, as we know. We'll get into this more sprint drama here in a second. The differentiation between Russell and Kimi is actually arguably closer now than it was at the start of the season. It does feel like Kimi's made some progress, but we've not really seen that in the results, and obviously he's still got a rookie mistake or two in there as well. So my opinion is he will show that in the coming rounds, but it might not be as consistent as he would like it to be. Ferrari, they will have a special livery for the Italian Grand Prix, which is what they usually do. This is what their suits are going to be like. So they've got a bit of blue going on, which they quite like to do as well for the Italian Grand Prix. This is what the car is going to look like. So it's a new version of the SF25 livery. It harkens back to a Niki Lauda car of 50 years ago, which is pretty stunning, right? This is the comparison there between Niki Lauda's, and they've even got the same writing that they went for on this Ferrari from 1975 compared to the new Ferrari here in 2025. So they've gone for the same thing. It's actually pretty cool. What do you guys think about it? I've seen some people say like, wow, this is spectacular. My opinion is like, it's fine. It's probably better than their regular livery. Look, the HP logo is all the talking point, isn't it? I will say the rear wing is much better, right? The rear wing without the white and the blue with this kind of grey, that's a lot nicer. It's much less of an eyesore. There's more white on the car now, which kind of helps the HP logo blend a little bit better. So I do think it's better than their standard livery, but you know, I don't think it's game-changing in my opinion, right? It's still kind of ugly. Maybe ugly is too harsh, right? I actually do quite like it, but it's not, I don't know, it's not turning heads massively for me, but intriguing your thoughts in the comments. It's kind of nice. I think it's better than what they had before, and I like the concept and the idea of it. I think it could probably be better. Obviously, if you got rid of the HP logo, people were throwing around ideas like this. Get rid of the HP logo, extends the Italian flag, and yeah, I think that would look pretty damn good. Obviously, there's a lot of carbon still exposed on the car, which makes sense nowadays because of the way the Formula 1 is, with the weight and all this type of stuff. If it was fully burgundy red and then the white on it, yeah, it would probably look a little bit more spectacular. That's what Ferrari are cooking up. And just before we get on to the other drama, I wanted to share this. So last weekend, this was one of the key incidents, one of many, that was causing lots of drama during the race. Leclerc's overtake on George Russell. Now, this was deemed at the end a no further action. I think the only reason for that is because Mercedes didn't push for it. I'm almost certain that if Mercedes really tried, they could have got Leclerc a penalty here. And did they want to do that for Leclerc for his home Grand Prix, or Ferrari home Grand Prix in Monza? If they were fighting for the championship, I think they would have pushed it. Had Leclerc finished the race, I think they might have pushed it as well. But because Russell said he thought it was Leclerc's fault, Toto said the same thing. But when they went to the stewards room, the stewards basically said that both drivers wanted no further action. Both teams were like, you know what, let's just call this a day and move on. Which I think is quite a sportsmanlike way to approach it. I think this racing was great, right? Like, I love the overtake. George left the door open. Leclerc absolutely sent it. Super hard racing. And look, it's right on the line of whether this should be fair or not. But technically, according to the rules, this overtake shouldn't have been allowed, I don't think, because he left the track. Now, what was funny is that during this lap, Leclerc's lap time was deleted. The stewards decided during the lap that he went outside a track limit and therefore his lap time got deleted. When they got to the stewards room to discuss what they were going to do, the stewards then said, which was kind of remarkable, we looked into whether car 16 remained on track. The available evidence was inconclusive. Both team representatives were in agreement that there was no clear evidence that he left the track. So the only way that they were really able to defend this is because if Leclerc did go off the track and he made the overtake happen, as brilliant as it was, and as, you know, elbows out hard racing as it was, the overtake really shouldn't have stood, right? But at the time, the camera angles we had didn't seem to show that. But now this picture's doing the rounds, which very clearly shows, beyond any doubt, that Leclerc's full car was clearly fully over the white line that defines the track limits at this corner. So, you know, I thought it was a great overtake. I'd like to see the racing rules defined in such a way, and it would be difficult, but I'd like to see the racing rules defined in a way where that overtake is acceptable, if like right on the line. But I'm pretty sure that this should have been an illegal overtake. And this picture, I kind of think shows that relatively conclusively. And there's lots of reaction from some Russell fans today saying like, damn, we got mugged off by this. And yeah, it was spectacular, but it was probably against the rules, but, you know, I'm sure people are going to have their opinions on that. But speaking of the rules changing, we've got to talk about what Stefano Domenicali was talking about today, and this has the F1 community in shambles, in uproar. I mean, you can tell by the number of, like, replies to the number of likes on these tweets and these discussions that things are getting pretty hectic. So let's get into it. Let's see what Domenicali had to say. We know that he's been pushing hard for more sprints, and I get it. And apparently some of the drivers are now more on board. Some of the comments he makes, though, later on in the article, I find so remarkable for so many reasons. So Domenicali says this: there's a topic on the table concerning the format we'll use in the coming years, starting with sprints. We need to understand whether to increase them, how to increase them, and whether to use different formats. We have had discussions. So he doesn't say whether to decrease them, obviously. And he's like, do we do it? And then how do we do it? So they're going to do it. The question is how and when and where. I have to say that aside from some older diehard fans, which I guess is me and you, and look, I'm actually open to some of these ideas. I just think some of the explanation for some of these ideas and the, let's say, thought process behind it is deeply flawed. Everyone wants sprint weekends. Promoters push for this format, and now the drivers are interested as well. Look, as a content creator, there's more to discuss when there was a qualifying session on Friday. If you're at the track, there's more to watch if there's a qualifying session on Friday. The stands fill more than they do otherwise. Now look, I like a free practice session. I find it interesting to watch, right? And I know that lots of you guys are kind of the same as well. It's pretty fascinating. But equally, do I tune in to every single minute of every free practice session the whole year? No, I'm sure some of you guys do, but not everyone is going to do that. And I understand why that is the case. The engineers love a free practice session. The drivers are kind of indifferent. The drivers don't, and we've asked the drivers this before, the drivers think, well, maybe an hour is fine because they know these tracks, and even those that don't, they pick it up relatively quickly. They're top level drivers, right? So a lot of the drivers, they feel like, do I need 3 hours drive around this circuit that I've driven around a million times? Like, no. I'm fine, right? Give me an hour. Now, the engineers want their practice time because they want to try everything on the car, but maybe reducing the practice time puts more pressure on. They've got to get their sims going into the weekend right. They've got to nail it right at the start. So, look, I'm open to reducing free practice. I think that's okay. Some of these other suggestions, not so okay. If I'm being provocative, free practice appeals to super specialists, people who want to see more action, prefer a sprint weekends. There's more to discuss and comment on Friday. There's a quali session, but I understand it's got to become part of F1. The direction is clear. I can guarantee that in a few years, there will be demand to have all weekends on the same format. I'm not saying we'll get to MotoGP with a sprint every round. That's too big a step, although that is effectively what he is saying here, I think. I think he's just trying to say this to be like, oh no, I'm not saying sprint every weekends, but he is saying that sprints are better for everyone, pretty much, as far as he's concerned, and that in a few years we want to do everything the same. So, what is the read there? I see it as more of a maturation process that respects a more traditionalist approach, which is, nice words, I will say. Now, this is interesting. As for the drivers, initially 18 were against the sprint and 2 in favour. Today, it is the opposite. We discussed it at the dinner we organised in Austria, and everyone spoke in favour. Even Max, with whom I spoke one-on-one, and I can't see why Domenicali would lie about this, is starting to say it makes sense. So I see evolution from everyone. In the end, drivers are born to race, and I get that. I think sprints done in the right way can be okay. The original format was so problematic because I think, as the article even goes on to describe, the original sprints that defines the race order for the Sunday just rearranged the field in that order. The current sprint format is much better. The sprints has more points on offer for the top team, so you will get some drivers taking some risk. The issue is there's a qualifying session later in the day, so you still can't take too much risk. It does exactly show you pretty much what's going to happen on the Sunday because you can see the pace of the cars, but thankfully Parc Fermé reopens now. So look, I'm much happier with the sprint format now than it used to be, and when there's a sprint weekend, I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. It's another thing going on. I do see the value in it, but again, my problem with it still is that it gives too much away for the Sunday, right? The main race becomes less compelling because of the sprint. That is still my opinion, and I don't know, you guys may disagree in the comments. Domenicali, his opinion seems to be that effectively that's a price worth paying, and maybe on some sense it is. So, that is one argument regardless, because Verstappen was vehemently against this for a long time, and I think for good reason, and Max now realises, well, at least that's what Domenicali says, that maybe one free practice, a sprint on occasion isn't the end of the world. It gives more opportunities for points as well. The drivers want to race more than drive around for no reason in practice and tick off a program that their team's got them to do. So I get that. So we'll see if Max comes out and says, because now Domenicali has said this, like, hey, Max, you're in favour. He's going to be asked about this, isn't he, in Monza? Certainly I'd be asking Max, like, yeah, is this true, what Domenicali says? Are you now a big pro-sprint man? I'm sure he's got a take on that. Now, this is when, however, things go, in my opinion, completely off a cliff edge, because he talks about, to put it bluntly, they're tired of free practice. That's an objective fact that we can't ignore, and they've now started to show that surveys say that we want more drivers to fight for a result, which is, fair enough. I understand it. I'm not sure this is the best way. This, though, is when things get kind of remarkable. Now, the 1956 Belgian Grand Prix was a 3-hour race. I mean, we had 4 hours in Canada not that long ago, like obviously a decade and a bit ago. Peter Collins won nearly 2 minutes ahead of second place. Now, look, that today would be a problem. But Domenicali says this: current races might be a bit too long for younger audiences. We are seeing on many of our channels that highlights do very well. For those of us who grew up with the current format, it's fine, but there's a large segment that only wants to see the key moments. So let's just dissect what this means here for a second. So the young people these days are TikTok brained, out of their mind, and they have no attention span. So instead of, trying to resolve that somehow, we instead cater to it, and we say, okay, they have no attention span, so instead we will make the races shorter. Now, this is so wrong on so many different levels, and I really hope that this kind of mindset does not, let's say, penetrate any further. Okay, do the sprints perform better than the main races? Are the sprints magically the best viewed among the younger audiences? Not as far as I'm aware, right? Why do highlights do well? I wonder. You condense all of the moments from a long race, of which, if it was shorter, there are fewer highlights. Very naturally indeed. You condense that all into a few-minute video, which is available totally for free on the Formula One YouTube channel, without needing to pay anything at all to any broadcasting for the rights. Of course, that type of content is going to do rather well. This is not a new thing in sports. For decades, people like watching Match of the Day for the highlights. Imagine the top guy, whatever his name is, at FIFA, right, in football, if he came out and said, we think 45 minutes a half is a bit long. These new kids, man, they just don't have the attention span for that. We're thinking maybe we do a 50-minute match or something. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, that would be so outrageous. To suggest that the Grand Prix need to get shorter somehow is such a backwards assessment of it. Now, yeah, do we want 3-hour Grand Prix? But like, an F1 race is 90 minutes to 2 hours, pretty much maximum. Football is 2 hours, right? It's the biggest sport in the world. Like, what are we talking about? Like, there is no way that is a problem. And also, okay, let's say the Dutch Grand Prix, you shorten it and it's only 40 laps instead of 70 or whatever. You don't get half the action. Antonelli doesn't take out Leclerc, so the highlights are less interesting. Norris's car doesn't break down, so the storylines are less interesting. The strategy becomes far less interesting. Like, do we want more one-stop races? Is that what's keeping people entertained? So, yeah, like, what he said so far, I get it. This, I think, is just completely, like, crazy, right? Why not make the races one lap, right? Because the TikTok kids, they love that stuff, right? Like, that's obviously the way that we should go, because the younger generation, not much attention span, so make it a one-lap race. Call it a day after that. Well done, everyone. Go up on the podium and have some pre-choreographed TikTok dances for the drivers to do. That'll keep the young kids entertained. Like, what are we talking about here? It's, yeah, I think that's a problematic assessment of the way that we're going. And also, reverse grids. I mean, we've got to discuss that as well. Domenicali says in F2 and F3, the format's been around for a long time, and pretty much says that we've discussed reverse grids before, and the drivers are now not as against it as they used to be, that many drivers were opposed to it, and now they say, well, we could give it a go. Look, do we want to do a reverse grid around Monaco? So, like, all the best drivers just don't score points because they're starting at the back? I don't know, man. I don't know where we go from here. I think that some experimentation is good, and I understand the value, certainly for promoters and for people at the race weekends, to have a sprint. I think it can add some value to the sport. But I think another thing that Domenicali's missing from this whole, the races are too long thing is like, okay, well, instead of maybe making the races shorter, which doesn't solve any of the issues, how about we try some things to make the races more entertaining? Like, right now, the tyres last so long. The Pirelli tyres are cooked. They either, like, they last for half a quali lap, or they last for 40 laps, 50 laps, 60 laps with no degradation, right? So there's problems there, because if our tyres, let's say Qatar, when they mandated that you had to pit 3 times, okay, it wasn't the best race of all time, but like, there was always something going on, right? So that's something that F1 need to think about. Instead of maybe making the races shorter, how about we think about the tyres, we think about the mandated pit stops or whatever, so that the race from start to finish is just more compelling. I don't think attention span is precisely an issue, because if the race is 40 laps, but nothing happens and nobody pits, yeah, people are going to get bored. Diehard fans are going to get bored as well when nothing is going on. They're still going to watch, but like, nothing's happening, right? If you can have a 120 lap race, but if someone's pitting every 5 laps and, you know, rain's coming down and some, you know, this is mandated and there's a safety car because somebody crashed or whatever, like, people are engaged, right? The length of it is not the problem. There's other things that they need to think about too. So anyway, that's my opinion. You guys may agree or disagree. Feel free to give your thoughts in the comment section below. The Italian Grand Prix is this weekend, and it is a normal weekend. Enjoy them while they last. FP1, FP2, FP3 qualifying, and the race on Sunday. So very much intrigued to your thoughts. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.